talk a little bit about authentic assessment. All right, that's our lesson for part of our lesson this week. So if I look into authentic assessment, we have a little quick video that I'd like for you to watch. And as we watch this, think about some things that it comes to your mind, or maybe some questions that you may have. And of course, we're going to focus on what is authentic.
School of the Future is a 6 through 12 public school in District 2 in New York City. It's located on the corner of 22nd Street and Lexington Avenue in Manhattan.
I have to usually answer why it's called School of the Future after people think we beam people up to the Star Trek Enterprise. But what I say is that School of the Future, although originally was named for Macintosh computers, my partner and I feel School of the Future now is a spearhead of progressive education that is rigorous and accountable.
And we're continuing to be a progressive school, but also to figure out how we are folding in assessment and folding in accountability. I think what makes authentic assessment authentic is that it's actually the kind of work that a person in that discipline would do. A science authentic assessment would challenge the kids to do the same kind of tasks that a scientist would actually do.
We're trying to give work that either mirrors what they might be doing later in life, or will prepare them for those kind of tasks, or is simply meaningful to them.
In terms of authentic work within the school, it needs to be something that the student really cares about and that the teacher really cares about. So if we want a school which is really making real change and really addressing students in their hearts, then we can't have curriculum that is just going through the motions.
And then the other piece is that making sure that the task is a synthesis type of task that will ensure the critical thinking necessary to feel that rigor is happening.
I think of authentic assessment as a window into the true understanding of the student.
It makes teaching much more efficient. You think that it takes all this time, but in fact it's far more targeted and efficient, and it really speeds things up.
I think first about what are the big ideas I want them to come away with. Some may argue that's curriculum, but I think it's even more fundamental than curriculum. What are the big things I want the students to be able to walk away with?
The key is asking yourself, how will I know? And ask that up front as you're doing backwards planning. What does that learning look like? What does it sound like? What would I be hearing? What would I be seeing on paper? And then based on that, creating whatever assessment tool works best for you.
When you're starting to plan your curriculum, start with, all right, so what are the 3 assessments then, the 3 big ones that I'm gonna need to see whether or not they got these skills? And then you can start thinking of smaller assessments on the way there, little check-ins, and then designing the activities that go along with, does this activity that I normally do, does it address what I really want them to understand?
I've been teaching now for about 13 years, and a lot of educational fads have come and gone. But one that I believe is hopefully here with us to stay is precisely this question of how do we know they got it? Before, sometimes it felt like if we taught a great lesson and the students were nodding a lot and maybe writing in their notebooks, we felt good. But now we have to find out, did they actually understand the material we were teaching them? Are they connecting this to their own intellectual interests? Is it authentic for them? Was there real learning that happened there? And I think we're getting better at doing that as teachers. I think we're getting better at doing that.
Or any type of assessment. Okay, so what is authentic? Well, I always like to think of the certificate you get in a diamond ring. It's a certificate of authenticity, saying it's a real diamond. Or when we see advertisements of authentic Mexican food. So, of course, we kind of have different opinions of that, don't we? Of what is really authentic. But anyway, we have authentic assessments to make it like it's real world, or for it's real, it's relevant to the students. But just assessment in general, it has to guide instruction. It has to be where your instruction is heading. That's why we have to have our assessment done first to know where we're going to go while we're teaching. And no, like I said last week, it's not teaching the test. But you have to know where you're going. Remember that vacation. We most times, 99% of the time, we do know where we're going for vacation. Some of us, yes, we do just get in the car and just drive. But in reality, we know we need to know where we're going in order to pack properly. So anyway, assessment is used to guide our learning community. So here's when we think of assessment. Take a few minutes, and I hope you're with your team or classmates. Doesn't have to be just your team, but some of your classmates. I hope you have gotten together for our normal class times. But what is authentic? What is formal and informal? Kagan in chapter 15 did discuss what the difference between several types of assessment, and one was the formal, informal. Then we have formative and summative, and we're going to talk about those in more detail today. I brought them up last week when we talked about the lesson cycle, about usually formative shows up when? When does formative show up? Around guided practice time. And summative is usually when? During independent practice. Okay? So it doesn't matter what type of assessment you're doing. You're checking for understanding. If it's formative, informal, formal, any type of assessment, it's just a huge umbrella. The word assessment itself is just a huge umbrella that is, how are you measuring your students? How do you know they are getting the material? Okay, and there's many, many ways of collecting them. Some just informal methods could be just having some type of a check sheet in front of you on your clipboard while you're walking around the classroom. Kind of like I have whenever I'm walking around and I visit with you when you're doing your literature circles. I have a little mental check or minus or plus of how I'm scoring you in a very informal way as we visit our literature circles. Or you could be very formal and have, like what's coming up next week is our midterm exam. Okay, but anyway, something to show that your students are gaining or gathering the standards or understanding the content. What's important about this, you have exams that you will have to be taking in order to become a certified teacher. One of the Texas Teacher Proficiencies. It says that you're going to have to know and be able to gather information from your students, know about assessment in a variety of ways. Okay, so it's coming straight from those standards. And this is not a Tarleton thing, it's a Texas thing, the Texas TEP, or TEA, sorry. Okay, again, can't stress enough on that what assessment means. Assessment does not mean it's a test. Okay, a lot of times when we hear the word assessment, we think exam. That's just one type. That is just a formal type of exam. Okay, but anything can be an assessment. Okay, so here's what they should have. An assessment should be a wide variety. It could be just while we're sitting and formally or informally discussing a topic. So just observations, your dialogue, discussions. And now here's our traditional, your quizzes and your tests. Those should be included, not just one form or the other. You don't want just exam, exam, exam. Have other forms of assessment. Many times school districts expect a minimum of 2 assessments per week. Well, you don't want to test your students with a formal exam 2 times a week. So maybe it will be some type of a rubric or checklist situation that you've developed that you're assessing. You're actually assessing your students, and you have something to back up why you have given them that certain assessment. Okay, but anyway, it's always gathered over time. So a very quick review. A formative assessment. Now remember, in Kagan, it talks, and I mentioned it a little bit last week, is we talk about formative versus summative. That formative is forming. It's while I'm cooking, while I'm creating that pot of chili, or while I'm making my tossed salad and I go, oh, I think I want to add this. And, or, if I don't like it at all, I can toss it all out. Whatever it is I'm cooking, I can throw it out and start all over because it's formative. I'm forming it. It's where I want to go with it. Okay. So with that in mind, data collected, we're talking about formative assessments, is data collected blank or blank instruction. Okay. So what is it? Data collected during or after instruction. Okay, it could be during or after instruction, and can be used for blank further instructional goals and objectives. Okay, can be used for developing further instructional goals and objectives and blank of instruction. When I'm making these formative decisions while I'm watching my students, I could also differentiate, have a differentiation of instruction, change the way I'm teaching it, do a different activity. Think about the multiple intelligences or the learning styles of your students and see how else can I go through to make this content relevant and make the material make more meaning to the students. Okay, now I want to stress something right here, differentiation versus modification. I don't want to modify my students' instruction unless I have an IEP, an individual education plan. If I have an IEP, that would be for your 504 or maybe for your special ed students, then yes, I have to modify that lesson. And it depends on what that plan is. It could be shortened reading. It could be that they're read 2, or it could be that instead of 4 answer choices, they only have 2 answer choices, or instead of 20 questions, they only have 10 questions. That is modifying my instruction, modifying my assessment. I cannot modify general ed students. You cannot modify general ed students. Now I can differentiate that for a struggling learner, I will do X, Y, and Z, but for my GT students, my gifted students, then maybe I'll do A, B, C. Whatever. You do something different, that's differentiating, but it's not modifying. It's not meaning the same thing, okay? So now, let's go to our next, summative. Now, Kagan, again, when you're talking about differentiation between summative and formative. Summative, it's summations. It's a summary. It's at the end. Like after I've read a book, I might write a summary. It's a done deal. Okay, I don't go and make any changes of it, anything after that. So now this type of assessment can be formal or informal. And it's just to show the progress. That's it, the progress at the end. For instance, a 6 weeks exam. Or it could be your teacher education, your assessment that your principal will do every end of school year. You're going to sit in with your principal or whomever is doing your evaluations for the year, and they're going to say, well, when I walked in here, and then whenever I saw you at this date, whenever I observed you on that date, this is what we saw, and this is your score. Okay. Now they may turn it and then say, okay, what are your goals? How can I improve for next year? But at that point, when they're telling you this is your score, or when you're discussing with a student how they did at the end of course exam, then that's a done deal. That is summative, okay? Now, very tricky. Sometimes summative can become formative if you take that information to make changes in maybe how you teach or how you're going to present that material for the next group. Even your final evaluation, end of year evaluation with your principal can become summative if you're going to say, okay, my goals are to do this during the summer, go to these workshops, go to this conference, and improve in whatever areas or enhance your teaching. Just in the word improve does not mean that you have a deficit or anything like that. It just means that you're a continual learner. You are a lifelong learner, okay? So now, authentic assessments. is it evaluates students' learning by having students do what? Blank a specific skill. What is authentic assessment? To demonstrate a specific skill, to show that they know how to do that. Or blank a product. What would that be? Create a product, okay? To make something. They can show they have that skill. For instance, you're going to demonstrate that you know how to weld by creating a barbecue pit out of a 55-gallon drum. All right? So you're showing the skills that you've learned creating it. So it's authentic assessment. You're assessing them still. And then, or solve a problem that could generate from doing what? From a real world situation. This is where problem-based learning is really, really good when it comes to making authenticity, making it very, very relevant. Maybe it's something in the community that needs to be solved. For instance, Glen Rose, I think it was their 4th, 5th graders. I can't remember exactly what grade level it was, but they entered this Odyssey competition, Odyssey of the Mind. And one of the community problem was about the dog pounds, for the strays, for cats and dogs, that there wasn't enough food, or they weren't taken care of, or the shelter would need cleaning. So they did this within their school. They had a project to where they were solving the problem of how can they get the community and the school involved in taking care of these orphaned animals. Okay, so that was making a real life connection. Some examples of authentic assessments could be models, demonstrations, like when you're getting ready to do your team teach, it's a demonstration, or a performance. Maybe I'm thinking performance is more like in band, or such things as a marching contest. Portfolios. This is big time real world where models had portfolios, architects had portfolios. Different people have a portfolio to show how their past experiences, how they're performing to either gain more clientele. Even teachers create portfolios with lesson plans and videos of them teaching. Okay, and of course, products. Now, how are we going to evaluate? If it's authentic, we need to have some type of authentic tool. A worksheet is not a tool to grade any type of authentic product. A worksheet is something you just grade, period. It is not an authentic tool to assess an authentic product. So we have things like rating scales. Band knows all about this for orchestra or their quartet or anything UIL, marching contests. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. And in their case, you want to get a 1. 1 is the best. Rubrics. We see rubrics. I just gave you a couple of them already this semester that have a scale within them. Sometimes it's a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 or a 3, 2, 1, or it could be a 20, 10, 5, whatever rating you want to put for each of those performance indicators. And then, of course, a checklist. Did you do it? All you do is check it off. Is it there or not? But those are tools how you can assess an authentic type of product. Okay, let's just look at this very quickly. What are some that you've experienced? What do you think STAR is? It's a type of assessment, but what kind? Okay, and do you think that STAR allows teachers to know all about the students' learning? And what other ways do we assess students' learning in school? Okay, I'll let y'all think about those questions. Let's see. Let's look at a cooperative learning project. Cooperative learning, what we've been doing, talking about Kagan, during guided practice. Okay, think about the words guided practice. Which one of which types of assessments would this fall under? Let's look at them. Is it formal? Is it summative? What about formative? Informal, traditional, and authentic. Which type of assessment? Right? Now, if it's formal, This is guided practice. That means we can fix it. We can change it. We're going to be giving, as teachers, giving the students a lot of guidance. Summative, again, this is guided practice, and we're going to be giving them error correction, feedback, change the answers, whatever it is, fix it. So it can't be summative. Definitely is formative. Remember, we're making those changes. Informal, yes, it's informal. It's very laid back. Traditional, well, I think it's heading that way to traditional. It's not really so much traditional because not everybody uses cooperative learning. Okay? And authentic. I believe it is very authentic because it's cooperative learning project. Whatever that project may be. It could be that they're working together on some type of research and they're putting together a PowerPoint or some kind of display board or a shadow box, and they're getting ready to present this orally to the students. Okay, so it's very authentic. Right? What about a 6 weeks test? What do you think? Multiple choice is the format. Okay. A lot of people say formal, and a lot of people say summative. You're right. Be summative because it's usually at the end of the 6 weeks. You usually don't go back over that again. Remember, a lot of report cards done at 6 weeks, and you usually don't go back and look at that content again. Curriculum-based. Yes, there's curriculum. So it is curriculum-based, and a lot of your schools are going to say, here is the test that you're going to give your students. Informal. Thinking it's not going to be informal. It's going to be more formal because it's a 6 weeks test. Informal would be inferring that maybe they're working together, but this is going to be formal. Traditional, yeah, you bet, it's traditional. You've had 6 weeks exams and multiple choice format, very traditional. Is it authentic? No, not too much authentic. They'll like to say sometimes that it's authentic, but the little bitty scenarios really, it's just all made up. Okay. So about the STAR, I'm going to live a little faster here. Yes, it's very formal. It's so formal. It's under lock and key. And you have to sign these documents saying you'll never talk to anybody about the test. You will not discuss before or during the test, anything like that, or you lose your teaching certificate. That's how formal it is. Summative, you bet. It's summative. But not a very good summation because it's a one-day snapshot of how that student took a test that one day. Formative. Now, some people might argue with me on this one. It can become formative if you're using the results to help you guide next year's class and maybe changing your teaching style or adding to your teaching repertoire of a particular area that was weak, that the students did bad in or did low performance in. And this only works well if you look at the years. For instance, if you're teaching 4th grade and you look at 3rd grade STAR test. You look at 3rd grade STAR test, and then you take those results to prepare you for when they become your 4th graders. That's when that really will help you the most. Formative, yeah, we just talked about that. Informal? No, it is not informal at all. Traditional, sad to say, there have been, if it's STAR test, there used to be teams, and there's TAKS and then TOS and whatever. There's all types of state assessments that's been handed around for a while. Authentic. Again, some people are going to say it's authentic, but it really isn't. I mean, they may have scenarios, but really, did you find it to be real world and real to life? I know they've tried. They each new battery of tests they're working on making it with some nonfiction text and some information that could be kind of cool, but that's where some people think, oh, it is authentic. Curriculum based, yes, it is curriculum based. It's based off your TEKS. Okay. What about the Texas test that you have to take? You will be taking this in the next couple of semesters. Actually, before you can even go do your clinical teaching that last semester, you have to have passed this exam. Yes, it's formal. Yes, for you, it will be summative, unless you take the test again. If you didn't pass and you take the test again, then I could see where it might be formative, because you can go, oh, okay, now I know what they're going to ask on that test, even though it's not going to be the exact same test, but it'll be something similar. Informal, oh heavens no. Traditional, yes. I even had to take that test years ago. Authentic, and again, just like the STAR test, they're going to say it's authentic because they'll have real world situations or scenarios that they've made up. Okay, and curriculum based, of course, it's curriculum based because you have, or I have, a college career readiness standards, or standards for you as a teacher will, the proficiencies that I must address to you in order for you to pass that test. Okay, what about student teaching? We could talk about this as even right now, your field experience, because your mentor will be evaluating you. And especially that last semester when you're there all day long, regular student teaching. Formal, there are parts of it, like the very last one is formal. Summative, a very last assessment from your university supervisor. What about formative? Yes, it's formative because your first evaluation from your mentor and from your university supervisor, those you can make changes yet. You can say, okay, I see where I didn't do well on my classroom management or whatever, and you can make some changes. Informal, yes, it's informal also, because you may have just sit down during your student teaching with your mentor and they'll have conversations while, after you've taught the lesson, how can I make it better? And there'll be a dialogue. Traditional, yes, very traditional. Again, student teaching I did mine, as a matter of fact, in Fredericksburg in the ag department there. Authentic, very. Now this one, definitely authentic, don't you think? Okay. Now, we're going to move into how to create a rubric, and this is based on your assignment that you're going to be fulfilling and completing. Is first you have to determine the criterion for the product. What are you going to be grading your product? What do you want to look for? It's up to you as a teacher. If it's, for instance, an essay, are you going to be looking at the introduction, like I'm doing for your vision statement? Are you going to use mechanics as part of it? Are you going to use, and I'm just kind of keeping the vision statement in my mind, am I going to be looking for examples of how you're supporting your statements? Okay. Maybe I'm looking at, did you use sources to support your statements like Kagan or Jensen, something like that. So I'm thinking of all the different criterion. I mean, it could be something as simple as, did you use complete sentences? Or if you're a lower grade, did every sentence start with a capital letter? That could be one of your criterions. It's up to you. If I'm looking at ag and I'm looking at maybe maybe some kind of a floral arrangement. Maybe your criterion will be, did you have X number of various designs within that arrangement? Was it balanced? Did it meet the minimum size requirement? There's all these different things that you will look at as determining the criterion. Then you need to decide, okay, I need some performance indicators. How am I going to then take my criterions, did they meet them, and convert it, but basically what you're doing, converting it into a number score. And always with a number score, you will have some type of adjective to describe what that number score is. For instance, maybe it's exemplary. And when you use the word exemplary, that means it is out of the ballpark, knocked your socks off, wonderful piece. They've done everything and more to meet your performance on that particular criterion. Maybe it's proficient. Okay, they did about par. That's what I expect. And proficient's a good thing. It could be your first one. Is it satisfactory? Which is not as good as proficient, but you're okay. Is it unsatisfactory? Boy, you missed the boat on a few things. So you need to decide what is your or performance indicators, what numbers. Is it going to be a grade range spread, for instance, maybe 10 to 15 points? And then it's going to be, let's see, it would be then 5 to 9 points. It's up to you on how you want to do your indicators, your performances. Or I like more specifically to be spot on. If my indicator is going to be exemplary, I'm going to say 20 points. Okay, that's, you earn 20 points. But if it's going to be proficient, maybe it'll be 15 points. And then if it's going to be satisfactory, maybe it's 10 points. But you can play around with those numbers to make sure that you get what you want to when you're scoring your student's product. Okay. Now we have to decide our levels. We need at least a minimum of 3 levels of performance indicators. Performance indicators, be very careful. I always have a 4th row. That means they didn't do anything. They get 0 because they didn't turn in anything. And you have that written in there. Or you can even make it 0 if they turned something in and it wasn't worth turning in. And they still could earn 0. Or if you want them to earn 1 point. Again, this is up to you on how you want that to be done. But anyway, the easiest way to start this is to go from the best criterion, that you're exemplary or proficient, whichever you want as your best, and you write your description up and just saying that, for instance, the vision statement, that it grabbed my attention, or you wouldn't have to use the so sorry about that, is maybe you might say the introduction grabbed the reader's attention, used quotes or statistics, or and stated a very complete, full thesis statement. Okay, well then what would be the bad one? The least, the one that they did the worst on, besides a 0, besides not doing it, is that they had an introduction. Or you might want to say they didn't even have an introduction. No introduction could be distinguished. Did not grab the reader's interest. Then, okay, then after you've got the best, you've got the worst, then what would be the middle? What would be the middle? And so just kind of figure in here, okay, well, they had an introduction. It somewhat grabbed my attention. And minimally, it could, or it's up to you. It may be that no thesis statement was stated, or a thesis statement could not be found, or a thesis statement was alluded to, but it wasn't clear. However way you want to state that. Now, to make this, I like to make it quantifiable as much as possible. Now, the example I just gave you is kind of hard to quantify, but let's look at mechanics, for instance. Maybe for the best, for the exemplary, there were no mechanical or grammatical mistakes in the paper. Okay, so I have the word no, or none, or they were 0. Then the worst, I want to say, okay, they had more than 5 grammatical or mechanical mistakes. And then what's in the middle? Well, if they had 0, so that means 1 would be the next level. And if the other one is 5, so it'd have to be that they had between 1 to 4 grammatical or mechanical mistakes within the paper. So that would give you your 3 levels. And of course, that 4th level is they didn't turn the paper in. Or if you want to make it that they had more than 5, or make it from 5 to 15, and then the worst one, which is really bad, is that they had more than 15 mistakes, then they could get 0 points or whatever. Again, you're deciding as a teacher what the point system is. Okay? So, okay, I want you to look at this one for a minute. What is wrong with this rubric? See, it's the same one that I just had here just a second ago. I just popped up this. What is wrong with that? Now, I may not have pointed this out just a minute ago when I was discussing this. Let me see if we can go back over here, another page. Is that we want to always start with the best descriptive first. And we've talked about this before, I believe, when I handed out rubrics for things that you're working on in this class. is there's a reason. Why do you think you want the best descriptive or criterion, well, not the criterion, but the descriptive performance indicator listed first and not last? Which you do. You will see some rubrics that have your best score over a far right-hand side. But why do you want it closer in the first, or actually the second column that the students will read? Yeah, you're right. It's the first thing that they'll read. You don't want them to be looking at the worst possible. Why do you want him to look up the worst way the product looks first? You're going to have some students that that's all they read. That they just read that first column or that second column, and then that's all they'll do. So you want to flip this around. So let me see if I did. Oh, I didn't think I did that. I left that. Sorry about that. Okay. But you want to have the excellent or the exemplary column first. Is what do you want that looking for first, then the middle, and then your poor performance. But again, some rubrics have way more than just 3 columns or performance indicators. Your rubric for your vision statement, I believe, has 5.